Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the Mayor and the host of this here podcast. And it's going to be a good one today. I've got my friend Toby coming in to hang out with us and we'll talk a little bit about AI and insurance agencies and the work that he's doing. It's just a fun conversation. I know that people are talking about AI a lot, and sometimes there's a little AI burnout there, and then some of you out there clamoring for more. So if you want to hear some cool stuff about AI and what's going on and how different use cases that Toby's found for it for agencies, hang out with me. It's gonna be a good one. If not, then check out a different one. But I really think you're gonna like this conversation. Toby's a good dude, and so. Check this one out. This one is sponsored by my good friends over at Smart Choice, the fastest growing agency network, hands down. I love working with Smart Choice, and they are crushing it out there with over 11 billion in written premium and 10,000 plus agencies across the country working with them. And they do it with no annual fees, no monthly fees. They do it with lower premium thresholds, higher commissions, large interest in helping you to write more business. So check them out. Also, my friends over at Canopy Connect, go to usecanopy.com/Heath. Check out the product, sign up for a demo. Just sign up in general so they know that I sent you if you go to that link. If you're already signed up, thank you for signing up. Go tell your friends about it. And also you get a discount for signing up through my page. And I just love them, man. I think they do a great job. You can check out the webinar we did recently. You can go back and check out all the episodes I've done with Tolga throughout the years. He's been with me since the jump. So yeah, love Canopy Connect personally. I've got a new sponsor coming into the show that you'll hear more about really soon. I'm excited about that. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't ask you a lot, but I am asking, if you like what you're hearing, if you love this show and you're continuing to listen to the show week in and week out, go hit the subscribe button for me. Leave me a review. I want more people to find out about the show. We're running on over 5 years now. And so I want to continue to grow. So give me a quick subscribe and a 5-star review, and maybe write me a little note. Tell me what you do like about the show. So I'm going to get out of the way officially and let you check out this amazing conversation with my man, Toby. Toby, what's going on, brother man?
What's going on, Heath?
How are you?
Doing well. It's a Friday morning, so I can't complain. Only thing that would make this better is if we were doing this, say 6 hours later, so we'd both be having a drink in our hands, and
that is correct.
But that's going to be the next one.
That is the next one. I wish we could have recorded, in person when we were in Dallas together, hanging out with a magician and chilling. Like that would have been fun.
That would have been a good time. I know you're headlining the North Carolina event, which we're going to be at in 2 weeks. Nice. Yeah, maybe we can do something in person there, man. That should be a fun time.
That would be killer. Yeah, man. I'm excited about that, actually. I get to do 2 sessions there, so that'll be fun. And I get to see some friends there, and I love what Abby and his team is doing over there in North Carolina. So I'm excited about it. So thanks for the plug there. I promise, guys, I did not pay him to say that. But guys, if you're going to be in North Carolina, come by and see me. I think it's like maybe even free to agents or something like that. So maybe, I don't know. If not, then I'm going to edit that out. But come hang out. And if I'm wrong, then I'll pay for your entry fee.
All right. We're going to hold you to that, man.
That's right. I'm pretty pumped about being there for that. So you've been doing the event circuit here and there. So what have you been seeing out there? Like what's the best thing you've seen like out on the road? Like is just being with the vendors? Is it like a special thing that you're doing? Like I saw a magician with you. Is that normal?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's 2 kinds of magic that we do here, right? There's the real magic that we have on the road, at these trade shows where we get a magician do some tricks, which are actually pretty cool. We have these kind of OneFort branded playing cards, that they'll do tricks with. So we have that to just get people excited. I know sometimes some of the trade shows, especially if it's early in the morning, folks just haven't finished their first coffee yet. They're just walking around, and starts off a little slow. So sometimes it's helpful to have a magician there to just liven up the mood a little bit. So that's the first kind of magic. But we always tell people after the trade show, sign up for a demo with OneFort. That's where we'll show you the real magic, which is the AI that we're
Yeah.
building, some of that cool stuff. So that's what we always tell them. But yeah, I mean, the trade shows have been fun. We've been on the road pretty much just the last couple of weeks. We're going to, I think, 5 or 6 more rest of this year. So it's fun to go to some of these regional ones where we're meeting with the smaller independent agencies. I think those are really the ones that we love talking to, just hearing from them what they're seeing day to day, some of the pain
Yeah.
points they're experiencing, and really just seeing them really interested in technology. I think more and more independent agents are open to trying out new things, and they're curious about AI. They're hearing about it all the
Yeah.
time. And yeah, they're just really eager to have those conversations. So yeah, we love meeting our partners in person for sure.
Yeah, man. I was gonna take a bet, to see how long it would take you to use those two magic letters of AI, but it was 2 minutes. Is a little longer than I expected, or 3 minutes almost. So we did good there. But no, I'm excited to hear, what you guys are doing with AI. But before, I really want to know a little bit more about Toby. Could you kind of take me a walk down memory lane, maybe go back as far as you want to, and kind of quickly lead me up to where you are today and how you got into this space?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's taken a long way for me to get here. So I'd love to walk, go back to memory lane and walk you through all that. But first off, just for the folks that might not have met me, which I would assume is most people listening in. I'm Toby. I'm one of the co-founders of OneFort. It's a AI powered solution for independent insurance agencies, retailers specifically, and we have been around for a couple of years. So I've been the co-founder and chief operating officer for the last 4 years, and based here in New York City. So for any folks in New York, let me know. I don't know if there's a comment section or something you guys have, or hit me up after you listen, and happy to grab happy hour or get you a drink if you're in town. But a bit more about myself. So I was actually born abroad. I was born in Hong Kong, and that's kind of where I'd grown up a little bit. And my dad started his career in insurance, so there's get a bit of a full circle there for me as well when I started my career in insurance. But raised abroad, and then moved to the U.S. A while back now. Can't even think of how many years it's been since I've been back here. But went to college, and that's actually where I met my co-founder. So there's a lot of fun stories there. I don't know how safe for work this podcast is, but he and I went through some fun, has a lot of fun times in college as well. Got to know each other well, and ended up starting a company together, 4 years ago. But a bit about my own background before OneFort. So like I mentioned, I started my career off on the insurance side, and that's where I'd worked for a large personal lines carrier. And they're actually based in Asia, headquartered in Asia, and worked with them, focused on helping their agents use technology better. Actually, so again, pretty full circle. And that's exactly what we're doing right now at OneFort. But back then, when I first started things out, I was probably fresh out of college. Obviously, it was probably one of the younger people on the team, and they rightfully expected that I would know a thing or two about technology. I think the average age of a lot of the folks working at the office I was at was a little bit higher. So they brought me in, and that was one of the main tasks that I had was helping folks just better implement technology or better use technologies for whatever goals they had. And it was a personalized carrier, so a lot of the folks were captive agents that were selling their different products, and that's really where I got firsthand exposure to a lot of agents that were interested in using tech, but just didn't really know where to even get started. Right? There were some tools out there, and the company itself had purchased a couple of licenses or subscriptions to things, but they just weren't sure where to get started. A lot of them were not super comfortable with it, but a lot of them were at least interested. Like they were like, hey, there's all these tools out there that can make them sell better, right? Can help them, make more money. They're obviously interested in that. So yeah, that's where I spent a little bit of time, and that was a really interesting experience, right? Just kind of working with these agents and seeing what they were experiencing day in, day out. So I did that for a while, working on the insurance side at the carrier. And it's funny, after that, I actually moved over to the tech side. So I don't know if that's the dark side is the tech or the insurance, but I moved over to a big tech company, spent a couple of years there, and worked across couple different products. But because of that experience in insurance, one of the types of clients or the client groups that I focused on were insurance companies, or so that constituted both carriers, but also agencies, large insurance companies that were actually buying technology through the big tech company or using kind of some of their tech to build out their own products. So kind of saw the flip side of that, right? Understood how technology companies were selling to insurers and selling to insurance companies. And that's really where I saw this huge disconnect, man. It's like these two giant industries, insurance and tech, and people are just talking completely different languages, right? It's huge. There's this huge miscommunication. I think, obviously, there's so much jargon, and obviously, people have spent a long time in these industries, right? There's typically, um, I don't know how many other industries are like this, but for insurance or for tech, people are kind of lifers, right? They spent their entire careers there, so I feel like there was just a pretty big miscommunication across these two, full technology companies that were selling into insurance companies, and
yeah, not to stop you, but yeah, what do you think that miscommunication is, in your opinion? Because that's something I'd like to dive into for a second. Because you're saying, what a lot of people are thinking, but yeah, there is that miscommunication there sometimes. And I'd love to hear from your opinion. What do you think that is?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's one of the things that we really thought about as we were starting at OneFort is like we don't want to repeat the mistakes of some other technology companies. And the one that I worked at was a big tech company, so obviously it was okay for them to fail once or twice. They were able to afford that. But yeah, we were very intentional about this from the start. So I would say the way of thinking is just so different between someone that was born and raised in the insurance world, or spent a lot of time there, compared to someone on the tech side. I would say, starting from the technologist's perspective, I think or actually rather, what's similar across both is that people love to solve problems, right? I think insurance people and technology people are both scrappy, right? We love to solve problems. There's very clear problems that you're solving for let's say, in insurance for their clients all the time. I think it's a very problem solver's mindset in both industries. But people in technology, actually like to think about the solution before the problem, right, that they're solving for. So what that means is, a lot of the times they'll kind of, before even talking to the customers or clients they're building for, they'll just kind of think about what's worked in the past. They might take a look at some research out there and kind of think of what's technology that might be of interest to people, that might have a need, that people might have a need for, and they'll just build it. They'll just build it
Yeah.
first and launch it out there in the market, see what sticks. Kind of throw spaghetti on the wall and kind of just see what lands. And that's been the way a lot of technologists have done things for a long time. And I mean, you've seen it's worked for a lot of these big tech companies, right? And I think it's Steve Jobs kind of had this mindset, right? I think, kind of echoing the old Henry Ford quote: "If you ask people what they want, they would have said faster horses," right? So I think a lot of technologists approach building with that mindset. They're like, hey, like, let's just put something together, some cool technology with the latest advancements, put it out there and see who likes it, see who doesn't, and that's kind of it. Whereas with insurance, it's very, just because of how people driven the industry is, how relationship driven it is. It starts with the problem first, right? And when you're solving problems, it starts with actually understanding the problem first, right? And that's where, with, let's say, insurance agents, right, having that discovery call with the clients, right, understanding what pain points they have, understanding what they actually need, understanding more about their business as well, right? And I think that's really how that relationship starts, is really understanding, asking more questions as opposed to kind of pitching to the clients. So that's typically how the insurance world starts, and then from there it's finding them problems,
Yeah.
right? Finding the right carriers to get them the coverage they need. So it's kind of a different approach, in terms of how they solve
No,
problems.
I think you're right on there. And, it's something that I talk about on the show a lot is,
Mm.
you see these, companies that come out in insurtech world, and I've been around 20 plus years. And I've noticed that there's like you mentioned, the insurtech companies that come in that are tech focused, like come from a tech background, and they try to back into the insurance solution. Then you've got the ones that come from an insurance background. They understand the problem and the challenges, but then, they try to back in the tech part of it, try to figure that part of it out.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, there's that yin and yang there. There's that, but I would love to see if there's actual truth and study behind this. But in my opinion, I choose to believe that the ones that, really do well long term are the ones that come from the industry background. And then, they, hire the tech people, and they get the developers, and they get the programmers and whatnot to solve for that challenge, and, especially I love seeing some of these, incubators, or these people that come in, and they'll help fund these people that have the insurance background to start their own things, whether it's,
Yeah.
I won't say any names, but I have a lot of friends of mine that have done that, and I've seen them go through, some of these accelerators and whatnot. It's cool to see. Oh my gosh. Or, some that have had years and years, decades almost of insurance experience, and they decide, you know what, I got to develop some tech to help back
Yeah.
into some of these challenges and problems. And I think hearing that you do have, I love that the audience got to hear you say you do have a carrier background. You do have an industry background, so you have dealt with agents and heard their challenges. But that being said, I'd love to know if, as you were developing this, technology in this company and whatnot, did you have you said you're very intentional. Did you have some conversations with agencies ahead of time and with carriers and with other tech companies ahead of time before you even launched, before you
Yeah.
even, began to launch, you even said the word launch?
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think, and I'll even take a step back. Like, I think obviously don't have as much experience as a lot of the folks that have been in the industry for, 20, 30 years. They've really seen it all and they've seen so much, technology that's worked and hasn't worked. So, for myself, I didn't have that long of a background compared to some of these folks. So one of the things that we really made sure as we were starting out was just having as many conversations as we could with people that, we were trying to build for. So independent agents, right? We actually think had upwards of 100, upwards of 100 conversations with different sized agencies, right? We were also trying to figure out, who were the target audience for what we were building. So just talking to agents across the board, understanding what they were experiencing, challenges that they were having with the technology that they use today. So we had some of those conversations. We actually went through one of those incubators that you mentioned. So that was, just kind of a first row exposure to a lot of agencies and some of the larger ones too, and understanding kind of the challenges they were having with technology. And I think it was actually really cool because that incubator was around the same time when AI, the big buzzword again. That was when it became the talk of the town. It was around um, early 2023. I think that's exactly when ChatGPT had launched, or around that
Oh
time.
yeah.
And that's when everyone was just talking about it. It's unavoidable, man. Like every street you're walking down, every industry you're in, it's just all over the map. So yeah, that was really cool to see that line up. And that was when people were just asking us. A lot of these agents were like, "Hey, like, what's up with it? Like, what are you guys using AI? Like, what can you guys do with that?" And obviously, flash forward 2 years from now, there's so much that AI has done in the insurtech world and for agencies. And yeah, but that's definitely something that we were very intentional about. Was
Yeah,
just
it's
having
totally
those conversations first before actually building something.
yeah, it's totally changed the world. Like, if we were 4 or 5 hours later, we may have to, like, take a shot for every time we say AI, but, obviously, we can't
Oh
do that
man,
at 8 o'clock in the morning. But yeah,
yeah,
um, uh, I do, um, I do love to hear, some of this stuff and what you're talking about with, visiting with agents, talking to the industry, getting some things going.
yeah,
What did you feel like were some of those challenges that you wanted to solve and get into? Because there's a lot.
yeah,
Again, being in this industry, and it's an old industry. It's been around a long time. I'm second generation. My dad's 82, still selling insurance. You hear of people that been in the industry, or their grandpa, great grandpa, so 100
yeah,
plus years. It is an older industry, but I have noticed a big ramp up over the last 5 or 6 years of tech, and we were starting to run a little bit more. We were jogging, and we were getting passed up by other industries. And then fintech started picking up, and then now insurtech is really picking up and almost like sprinting at this point.
yeah.
But that being said, there's a lot of insurtech companies, and I'm going to be speaking at ITC, another selfless plug for me. And if you ever been to ITC, have you ever been to ITC? That thing is
Yeah.
massive.
It's
I mean, and there is companies everywhere, and there's investors there, and it's unreal. But with that many insurtech companies looking to solve that many challenges across our industry, where did you see, okay, here's where we can carve out our own niche. We can carve out our lane. We can really help agencies. So I guess the first question is, what is that challenge you wanted to? And then, we can dive into like what you guys are doing on the back end of that. But what was that challenge for you guys?
I would say the first thing we wanted to make sure of was we're only sticking to one specific segment of people we want to solve a problem for. There's people out there that are trying to solve for everyone in the ecosystem, and that's just going to be hard to do, at least from the get go, right? There's folks out there that are like, hey, here's a product that works for carriers, MGAs, wholesalers, retailers, right? Just kind of, throwing everything at pretty much any stakeholder out there. And, we were very intentional about solving for the independent retail agents. I think that's what might make us maybe a little bit different from some folks is that was, I mean, that still is who we work with, and who we wanted to work with 4 years ago was the independent insurance agents. I think there's just so much that we saw with them where there were obviously adding so much value, and actually even taking a step back to what we're doing for them. I think big reason why that is we want to maximize the impact that our technology would have, and that's really just going to be at the agents level, right? I think that's the front lines of who's working with businesses buying insurance, right? So if the businesses buying insurance aren't having a good experience, that's really on the retail agents, right? It's they're the ones that are responsible for pretty much the entire insurance purchasing journey for American businesses. So we wanted to solve problems for them first. We also realized there's a huge problem, in terms of underinsurance right now, and mainly for smaller to mid-sized businesses, but a lot of businesses just aren't buying the coverages that they need. They're underinsured, right? So they're not buying the right limits. So who's the best positioned or equipped to help these guys? It is the agents, right? So that's why we wanted to build the technology. We thought that's where we could maximize the impact of what we were building, as opposed to building for folks further up the value chain or the production chain. So that we were very intentional about just building for them. And I would say some of the challenges that we saw, I'll split it up into two buckets. One is kind of at the desk level, right? So folks that are working day in, day out, account managers, producers at these agencies. I'll kind of talk about problems for them first. And I'll talk about just more generally, if you're an agency owner, maybe for an independent one, let's say a smaller to mid-sized one, I'll talk about some of the challenges the agency owners have been telling us about. But first off is for the account managers and producers, and I'm not the first one to say this, but especially if there's not too much technology being used at the agency right now, a lot of those workflows, a lot of those things they're doing are still pretty manual and time consuming. And what that means is it's just taking them, let's say, hours to get a submission done. And I'm just talking about for an account manager. And we'll definitely talk about what OneFort does for them on the back end. But just in terms of what they're experiencing right now, right? It's like, let's say you're an account manager, commercial lines, you're trying to get a submission done, right? You're trying to get the application out to different markets. You're trying to get those quotes back for your client, put together that proposal. That might take you a couple hours per submission, right? There's a lot of manual steps that are involved. And even with the technology that was available just as of a year ago, that still would have taken you a lot of time, right? I think there's still so many manual steps that are involved and nothing was really automated. And so that was a big problem that we saw. There's folks that were burnt out. They were telling us, hey, like they're spending hours on something and that's repetitive or doing this, just on a daily or weekly basis. And that was just obviously not ideal, right? No one loves to do manual work. No one wants to be, burnt out with paperwork and admin work, right? So I think from the account manager level, that's something that we saw a ton just across agencies of all sizes, man. Even at some of the big ones, like you'd be surprised. Like some of these guys have huge budgets for tech, but their teams are still not using it in the best way possible, and they're still burdened by a ton of a lot of these manual workflows. So I would say from the account manager standpoint, that's something that we saw a ton. But real quick on the producer side, and I'm sure you have some thoughts here, and I'll chat more about the agency owner's perspective shortly. But for producers, what we were seeing is in such a rapidly changing ecosystem for risk and for insurance, there are a lot of new coverages coming out, right? Or new types of coverages. The coverages themselves are also changing, right? So even taking cyber as an example, the cyber risk landscape changes on a daily basis, right? There's new vectors of attacks. There's new types of claims scenarios and examples of attacks out there. Cyber attacks happen on an hourly, if not on a per minute basis these days. So it's such a rapidly evolving landscape, and a lot of producers are just telling us, hey, like, how do we have those conversations with clients if it's the risks themselves are changing so quickly, right? They were having a challenge keeping up with everything that was going on. So I'd say those are kind of two challenges that we heard a lot from those 100 plus conversations, and obviously informed what we've built here at OneFort and what we're solving for them. But yeah, I mean, I'll pause there before I can go into the agency owners, because I think there's
no, you're good
back there. Like,
so one of the things you talked about there was you brought up something that I hear a lot, working for a large tech company, and we work with a lot of the Orange partners and work with a lot of different things. And then with insurance, I talk to a lot of tech people as well. It's like everyone wants to solve that manual, labor type. They all want to solve for that duplicate entry, for all of those kinds of things, which is great. And I think there's plenty of room for that. But my question, I guess, to start off with that, if you could just tell me quick, like, how do you guys feel like you're different in that, as far as solving for that issue? Because again, even at Vertifor, we talk about, and again, this is not the Vertifor insurance podcast, but we talk about, getting rid of that duplicate entry and taking care of some of those manual workflows for you and doing some of those things. And we talk to our competitors, we talk to our friends, we talk to other partners. But what makes OneFort different in that?
Yeah, so that is a really good question. It's something that I think a lot of folks have been trying to solve, as you mentioned. And again, not to use the buzzword too much, but with AI, I think it's finally possible to actually automate the end-to-end flow for a lot of these processes, whereas prior solutions might have only addressed certain parts of that process as opposed to the entire flow, right? They might have helped with 40% of the manual duplicate entry, but 60% of it was still on the agents to complete manually. So what I would say is maybe take an example of one of those tangible use cases, like for an independent agent or account manager that's making a submission for an account they have, whether it's new business or renewal. Typically, there's a lot of manual work involved. There's just gathering all the information that's needed for submission, getting it out to the markets, and I'll even point to very specific technology that a lot of folks use, which is a comparative rater, right? I mean, the comparative raters have been around for a while, right? Obviously, we've seen success with some of them, but like you mentioned, it still hasn't actually automated the full experience for agents for a lot of different reasons. But I think with a comparative rater, well, couple of things I'll say there. Number one is you still have to go in there and plug the data in yourself, right? It's not like comparative rater is just going to magically be able to do the submission for you. You still have to go in there. You still have to do the data entry. So it's not like it's eliminating the manual work. Maybe it's lessening it a little bit, but you still got to do that. Um, it doesn't always get you what you need, right? Sometimes a lot of folks are plugging things in, and we hear from agents all the time, they're plugging things into a rater and it kind of just radio silence from there. They're not getting what they need back. It gets stuck in what we call referral hell, right? It's like it's sent to an underwriter. They might look at it, they might not, they might have everything they need, they might not, and it just nothing ever actually happens after that. Third problem too is for comparative raters, you're only as good as the number of carriers they are integrated with, right? So there is no rater out there, at least from all the agents we talk to, that actually has all the carriers that they want to quote from. So what ends up happening is you'll still go to the rater for a couple of those markets, for a couple of the companies that they offer, and you'll end up having to still go into some other portals. You have to email it to a broker you work with. It still is a pretty disjointed experience or disjointed process in terms of getting a submission done. So yeah, I mean, I'd say there's a lot of technology that hasn't solved for it, but what we do that's a little bit different is, again, using the big buzzword, is we're using AI to really automate a lot of this. So I won't get too into the weeds, but to kind of address all three of those problems I mentioned with the submission experience with raters, number one is we don't even need people to plug things into our portal. I mean, we have a platform for people if they want to come in and they use it, and it's a great experience. Actually, we've actually gotten really good feedback from all our agents on the platform experience, but we've actually had a lot of agents recently that they integrate their tools with OneFort, meaning all the data that they're already getting from their clients, all of the completed applications, existing documents that are needed for submission that they have already. They don't even have to plug it into OneFort anymore. We have these integrations set up that automatically extracts the data. So just imagine kind of having this on autopilot. You're not even having to come into a rater or to plug the information in. With the integrations, everything just ends up getting extracted. All the relevant information gets extracted for us to help them do the submissions. I think that's the first problem. With the second problem, right, of the uh, raters not really working, right? They're not always giving you the quotes back, or they're not even connected to the carriers you want to submit to. We solve for that again using some automation. So what we do is a little bit different. Is we do connect to quite a few carriers on the back end. So we do offer quite a few markets. Some of the ones that you mentioned earlier that are on our website, a lot of the specialty lines markets, right? So on the cyber side, right, Coalition, Tokyo Marine, some of these guys, we are connected to them on the back end, meaning you once we have the information needed to quotes from you with the integrations, we're able to automatically ping on the back end those carriers and get the quotes back via API. But we're not limited to that, right? I think a lot of raters are just limited to the carriers that offer APIs, but reality is, and you definitely know this as well, Heath, is a lot of carriers either don't have APIs available, right? They don't have the backend integrations into these technology platforms, or the APIs aren't well maintained. They're not up to date. They're not really the best quality, right? Yes, maybe it's sometimes going to work, sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of downtime. So what we do, which prevents us from being limited by that, is we have AI agents we've built, kind of these operators or bots, if you will, that will actually go into different carrier portals, places that you need to do the submission manually on right now. and it's going to do the data entry for them. So it's these AI agents that will basically mimic the human data entry on these different portals as opposed to doing it on the back end. So we still have the back end, API connectivity to quite a few carriers, but for many of the carriers that either don't have APIs available or maybe it's not the best quality out there, we have those AI agents that will, kind of do that last mile part of the submission and get those quotes back for the agents. So that basically frees us up to quote as many markets as the agents wants without being restricted like a traditional rater might compare, might have those limitations. So yeah, that's how
that's a lot, and I think you're right on that, and that's another, challenge, that I hear. Obviously, at Vertifor we have a couple of raters that we feel like are really strong raters. But yeah, you're right. There is that challenge of people saying, I don't get an accurate quote, or I can't get to all of my markets, or especially in this market, depending on where you're at, you have carriers that are, that are on, they're shut down right now, or they've got moratoriums out there, or they're just not wanting to write, business. So as far as that goes, like how does OneFort know, or how does the technology know which carriers they have access to and they don't? Or is it just provide quotes out there and then they can go get the, get the application to try to get that carrier in their agency later? Or like, how does it know where to go? And again, does it work with MGAs as well? There's just a lot of things there. But again, you don't have to dive into all of that. But just, as we're, halfway through or 30 minutes into this, I guess, talk to me a little bit more about, OneFort and, not necessarily have a huge commercial, but yeah, just tell me a little bit more about OneFort, what you're doing there and how that's working there. And then I do want to get into some of the agency owner, challenges you guys are working with too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know we waited half an hour for getting into the actual overview of OneFort, but what we basically do is we have an all-in-one AI solution for insurance agencies. We focus primarily on commercial agencies as well. That's where we see a lot of use cases for AI. But what we do at a high level is we want to use AI to help agents make more money, right? So grow their revenue and spend less money. So save costs and save time. So that's kind of how we like to describe it. It's simple. We want to help you make more and spend less, right? And there's different ways of doing it. There's a lot of different use cases we've built for account managers, for producers, for the agency owners, which we'll get into shortly. But there's a couple of different things that we do. I would say a big use case is the one that I touched on earlier, which is that automation piece when it comes to submissions, quoting, renewals. That's just the core of a lot of agency operations, right? That's what the value that agents are really providing to their clients is through that process. But unfortunately, today it's still so manual and so time consuming and so repetitive. So we've built a lot of technology that automates that quoting process or the submission process for account managers. And to your question earlier, just to answer that first, we will have an onboarding process with the agencies to understand which markets they like to work, which markets they have access to, which ones they don't. So that is
okay,
kind of that's kind of a living.
So it will be kind of customized to them.
Yeah, it's customized, exactly, and that also opens us up, right? Basically any market they're already going to, whether it's done via a portal submission or if it's emailing an underwriter, we have ways to integrate those workflows into OneFort so that it's instead of going to 5 different places to get a submission done, OneFort will help finish a submission in just one go and get it out to all those markets for them. So yeah, we're not limited by just the 10 or 20 carriers out there that we're integrated with via API. But we do provide some market access. So I would say on the specialty line side, similar to some of the other raters out there or some of the other similar tools out there, we do provide some market access to the specialty, the cyber, E&O, D&O, some of those less frequent lines for independent agents that they might not have access to. We can provide some access there, or we can also help them work better with their wholesalers, their existing brokers that they work with. We can also help them either submit through their portals if they have some. I know some wholesalers do, or we also facilitate that email submission flow, because we all know we know that sometimes takes a while as well, just kind of drafting those emails to each different broker you're working with. So yeah, we'll kind of help them get it out. So basically, whoever they want to quote with, we have ways of integrating there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you guys are doing some really cool stuff on that. And then, but you guys that's not just the only use case that you guys have as far as like quoting and whatnot. You guys are doing a lot of different things there. So talk to me a little bit more about some of the other Yeah, maybe pick at least one other example of a use case you guys have besides just the quoting aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, the quoting aspect, I would say, is a big one, but more than that, right? That's helping folks save time, and that's helping them, maybe reduce
Yeah.
costs on the agency side. But what we really want to focus on too, which a lot of other AI companies are really neglecting, is how do we use automation to actually help folks make more money as opposed to just saving, right? It's how do we help you grow your revenue? How do we help you sell more? So one of the really big use cases with OneFort is actually helping folks cross sell and upsell their existing accounts, their existing books of business. And, like I mentioned earlier, there's a huge, I think 75% of businesses in the US are underinsured, meaning that they're not getting the coverages they need. They are not buying the products that they need. And they're relying on their agents, right, to inform them on what they should be buying. And what we've built is kind of this, we call it cross sell and upsell and autopilot. So we basically helped you understand your entire book of business, and we're able to do that through some of those integrations that I mentioned earlier, where we can see, hey, here's your book of business, here are the clients you work with. Can even show them a nice pie chart of the industry breakdown and kind of the size breakdown, just helping them have some of that visibility across their book. But more importantly, we'll show them kind of do this coverage audit where we'll show them, hey, here are the clients that need D&O coverage, right? We know that based on their size, their industry,
Yeah.
the actual risk profile of this business, these businesses need this coverage the most. And we'll actually even show them, hey, here's the recommended limits based on the size of the company. Here are the most common claim scenarios based on their industry. So it's actually really tailored and personalized to each specific clients that the producer has. And this actually solves one of those problems I mentioned earlier, which is folks don't know what they don't know, right? So a lot of businesses might not even have heard of most of these coverages out there. And for a lot of producers, because of how fast changing the risk environments are, they're sometimes not, they obviously know about some of these coverages out there. Everyone knows about cyber, every agent knows about cyber, but they might not necessarily know how to have that conversation with the clients. Maybe it's, someone that's been in the industry for a while, and they're obviously very, very well versed in the coverages that they've been talking about for all these years. But for some of these newer coverages, maybe they're not as familiar with some of the coverage types or some of the different options out there. So what we do with these coverage audits is we'll actually provide you with those materials where you can actually bring that to your clients. In fact, it's included in a lot of those proposals we auto generate for every submission for the account manager. So the client's actually going to see this coverage audit that says, hey, you're currently missing XYZ coverages. We think you need it because of these reasons here, because of your industry, because similar companies to you of your size have experienced these types of claims. We'll show you, hey, here's how much limits you should be buying, so informing them of the right limit as opposed to being undercovered, and also giving them a call to action to get started with the application. So there's some automation we do there,
Yeah.
but telling them, hey, like here's how you get started to get the coverage you need, and kind of take it to the finish line from there.
Yeah, I could see, as an agency owner or as someone who's training agents, you could get someone from green out of the box to, a lot more comfortable selling with something like this to be able to say, maybe they don't know, but to have this kind of technology to be able to say, okay, here's some talking points. Maybe they can build up some scripting for their new producers or, do some role playing based on that. And I really think it could help them to, and that's the beauty of AI. And those are my two favorite letters right now. And I know it's a buzz. I know people are probably tired of hearing about it, but I'm fascinated, by all the different use cases and what's going on. And I've been using this. I don't know if you heard of Corsive, but I found this thing called Corsive. It's an app on my phone now that like I take all these different courses on AI. And not this is a plug for them. They're not a sponsor of the show, but there's so many different use cases and different things to do besides just put a prompt in and get an answer here. And so, I say all that. If you want to check it out, you should check it out. I don't have an affiliate link or anything, so it's not a paid ad, but, just seeing all the different use cases. But this would be another use case here that a producer could use if they had one for it to be able to say, you know what, not only am I going to get that stuff you talked about earlier, but now I also have some talking points. I also have some reasons why. And if somebody comes back and asks the question, maybe I don't necessarily know the answer, but I at least have these prompts here, like that'll tell me, okay, I think you should have cyber, for example. You brought that one up because of da 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 da. And they might even come back and ask a question, but they probably have all the answers they need right there. Or we see that maybe if you don't have this, you need that, or whatever it might be, service line coverage, or maybe you need some parametric to help you with deductibles, or maybe you need flood insurance because you're in a area that maybe they didn't realize they were in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's lots of different use cases there, and I love that for you guys. But yeah, we can never say AI enough on this, but I do think what you guys are doing is very cool, and I'm glad to hear how you guys are doing that. But I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but you brought that up, and I just thought, my brain starts going on that kind of stuff as far as use cases there, even for a service person.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, there's so many use cases now that we're seeing, and it's funny, we're actually seeing people use OneFort for use cases we didn't even think about when we were building out the tool, right? So we have kind of similar to ChatGPT, we have this chatbot that folks can chat to, but what's different between ours and ChatGPT, kind of the generic OpenAI version, is we are pretty integrated to the existing data from an agency, the existing workflows that they have, the client list, the account list that they have. So it's almost like a ChatGPT that's very specific to that specific client. So you can ask questions like, hey, like for this client, what coverage should I be talking about, right? Or what are some of the upcoming the types of risks that they should be aware of, things that I should have, things that I should talk about in my next catch up or conversation with them. And it's basically an answer all of that for you based on the existing knowledge that our AI has around that client. So based on what coverages they have, based on their entire risk profile, because we know based on their application, based on some third-party sources as well, that we're scraping off the internet, here are XYZ, areas of improvement for them or things that they should be aware of for their upcoming renewal. So yeah, man, I mean, there's a ton of use cases. I mean, actually that was one use case we didn't think about, but people were using our chatbot for it. And we were like, oh, that's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, there's so many, and I know we could sit here and camp out on some of those different use cases and play around on some of that. But, as far as, you and I have talked several times, and we've gotten to hang out in person a little bit, and you've talked to me about, continue. What I love about you guys is continue to iterate, continue to grow, continue to find other ways to do things. What's next? If you can kind of pull back curtain a smidge, like, can you tell me a little bit, like, what's upcoming? What can the audience, maybe they've never heard of it, or maybe they already know about OneFort. You can be like, here's some things we're looking to do, whether it's, internally or externally. You got to give me a little something here.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, what I'll say is we've been on the road a lot. We've actually been, this past 2 years has been a huge period of growth for us. So we've worked with a lot of agencies just, across the entire country. We're expanding to even more places now. We're, pretty much traveling, going across each state and doing a road show. But we've worked with a lot of agents. We've, also grown a lot just as a business, growing the team, raised, capital funding as well. So earlier this year was when we closed our latest round. So we're at about $10 million right now in funding. So all that to say, we're going to be growing quite a bit over the next couple of years, working with more agencies out there. So that's what's going to happen, from the external standpoint. But in terms of the product, it's ever evolving. We're always iterating based on the feedback of the agents we work with. So we're very, we talk to them all the time. We're not, just trying to build technology, have them use it, and just kind of never engage with them again. We're always talking to the actual users, the account managers that are logging in, to the producers that are using those, cross sell, those materials I mentioned, those, kind of sheets that we built out for them. Talking to the agency owners that use us across the agency to get their feedback. So I would say the couple of things we're working on, I'll just mention one, and is actually targeted towards the agency owners. So kind of addresses what we were chatting about a bit earlier. But there's a lot of problems for agency owners. I'll get into what some of the common ones I hear are and how we can solve for them. But for agency owners, we're also building a lot of powerful analytics for them. I think a common problem we hear from agency owners is, hey, like they just don't really know what's the state of, the lay of the land. Like they know obviously from a high level, like, oh, here are the types of customers that we do well with. Here are the opportunities of growth, right, that they should pursue. So they have a rough idea of kind of what's happening across the board, across all the different teams, agents that they have on the team, but they don't really have a lot of numbers or data to back that up. And they might have it, but it's not really visualized in a clean way for them to actually make decisions off of. So we're building a lot of helpful views or dashboards for those agency owners. And a big part of the reason why we're able to do this is because of those integrations I mentioned, where we're able to basically, when they're setting up OneFort, integrate those tools you're already using or the data structures you already have we're able to show you, hey, like here's our entire book of business. Here's how it actually breaks down based on industry, it's based on client size or geography. We can actually show you those tangible numbers based on your existing book. And what we're building now is actually helping agency owners at the kind of leadership level identify opportunities for growth. So it's like, hey, here are the industries that you're doing well on. Here are the ones that are not doing as well with, and here's some resources. Here's how you can actually get better, right? So giving them tips and giving them these analytics and insights across their book of business, across their entire agency, rather, and giving them resources that powered by our AI, but giving them those resources to improve whatever challenges they might be seeing at the leadership level. So yeah, we're building some stuff out there for the agency owners, but I would say in terms of the work that we've done with account managers and producers, it's really just making the product even better and faster for them. I think there's obviously a lot of value they're getting out of it, but there's always more work to be done. In improving the experience. It's a never ending cycle. So
Yeah,
we're investing a lot in that as well.
that's cool. I love letting the audience hear a little bit about some of the newer things coming out, what you guys are looking at next. And so obviously you guys have been around for a little bit now, and like you guys obviously going to be around for a long time. And so where do you guys see your footing, like where you're going to be 3 to 5 years from now? Like, is there expanding in this space even more, or is there new avenues or new industries or new things? Are you going to stay in the insurance space? Like, what's the roadmap look like 3 to 5 years from now, if you could say?
Yeah, we're doubling down on everything we're doing right now, man. I mean, we are sticking with insurance, independent insurance agents. I think there's also, come back to the first question that we were talking through, there's a lot of tools out there that are not only just trying to solve too many problems for too many stakeholders, like, hey, we're building for carriers, for MGAs, for brokers, wholesalers. They're also going out there and trying to go into other industries. They're like, hey, like we're selling for insurance, but they're also selling for finance, financial professionals, wealth managers. A lot of tools out there that do that, but we were very intentional from the start, and we still are. 4 years in, we're just building for agencies, right? There's already so many opportunities, so many challenges that they can solve with technology. So we're heads down focused on just working with agents, and that's going to be for the long haul. But in terms of the use cases that we can solve for, especially with how quick AI is advancing, a lot of the new technology that's coming out with different players across the ecosystem, there's a lot more that we can do. So right now, there's already a lot that we're automating for the account managers, but just kind of thinking of examples out there. But right now, for the producers, we're helping them prepare for those client conversations. Right, there's some of those materials that we're building out for them, but there could be a lot that we can do with actually helping them, grow, just even prospect better, right? So, get more accounts based on their existing kind of relationships and based on kind of what's out there. We can do a lot using AI to help them understand what additional prospects they could get, new clients, introductions they can tap into based on their network. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff, just especially as AI expanding for us to help
100%.
folks just do their jobs better and faster. But yeah, man,
Very cool.
It's an interesting time to be in the business. And one last thing actually that came to mind as we were talking about the agency owners is obviously the folks that are listening in on this call are probably tech savvy. They're probably interested in technology, but I would say that the biggest problem in insurance that we really want to solve for is because it's such a people driven or human driven industry, is the talents shortage, right? I think there's a huge shortage of talents in the industry for a couple different reasons. Number one is just the fact that the average age in the industry, actually not a specific number, but I know 50% of folks working in the industry right now are due to retire in the next 10 years, right? So there is going to be a gap. There is going to be a shortage of talents in the industry. And what that means is there needs to be a fresh blood. There needs to be new people joining the industry, fresh out of college. You need more people entering the workforce for insurance. And unfortunately, that's just not really the case. There's not enough supply of labor or talents compared to the demand. And the triple reason, there could be different reasons behind it, but one of our big hypotheses is that technology can really solve for this talent shortage, especially for attracting younger talents to join in the industry and join your agency or join your company. You have to equip them with the right technology that they're used to, right? Folks are not, especially younger professionals, younger employees. They're not going to be satisfied with using technology that's outdated. They're not going to be comfortable living at home. When they're outside of the workplace, they're using technology, they're living in 2025, but when they step into the office, you can't give them technology from 1995, right? That's something that's not going to help with retaining those employees or attracting more employees. So what I would say is we really see AI and technology, and it's not just limited to OneFort. This is just technology overall, but we see it as a way of helping the insurance industry grow, attract more talents, right? Keep younger talents around so that they stick. They're having more productive days at the office. They're not burdened with all this manual work, and that's going to burn them out, and they're going to end up leaving. We want to see technology as an enabler for folks in the industry so that they can prosper in their work. They can really stick around and do the best work they can. And hopefully this also attracts younger talent, because I think one of the latest statistics is that only 4% of Gen Z or millennials see insurance as an ideal industry to get into, which is unfortunate. I mean, there's so many opportunities out
Yeah,
there. It's
man,
such an interesting industry, but
you're
it's
right.
so sad to see that a lot of young folks are just not as interested as maybe prior generations. So again, I think technology is just a great way for us to be able to keep these folks around, make sure they're happy, and just bring on more talents, right? Because there's so many interesting challenges that we can solve for insurance using technology. And yeah, hopefully that's a way for us to boost that 4% up to where it should be. So
Yeah, dude, I love it. I think you're right on there, and I think that's definitely a good use case, because that's something that I care about a lot, is bringing in, ushering in new talent. And I love talking over the universities, or bringing this up and trying to bring new people, even if they're not out of college, like young, even bringing as a second career, an encore career, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a lot there too. So that being said, I mean, we've talked about a lot of different use cases, and as a going through, making sure I didn't miss anything on your website, because I do want to dive in as much as I can. But tell me, or tell the audience, if they wanted to learn more, what's the best way? Would connect with you on LinkedIn, go to your website? What's going on? Tell me a little bit about how they could find you so that we can drive a little traffic your way.
yeah, man, I appreciate that. So we're on the road for the next couple of weeks. So I'll call out some of them. And yeah, I know you're actually going to be at some of them too. We talked about North Carolina, but we're in North Carolina, Greensboro, 2 weeks from now. We're in Illinois for the Big I conference early October. We're going
Yeah.
to Georgia the week after that. So that's again the Independent Agents Association. We're in Connecticut for their Big I, and the Kentucky for their Big I. So there's a lot of shows we're going to be at in the next couple of weeks and months. So we'd love to meet people in person. If any folks listening are in any of those states or going to any of those conferences, let us know, and we'd love to have a drink. It's always easier to get to know someone over a drink than over a Zoom call. So we'd love to do that. But if anyone's interested, we can come to our website. It's easy to just plug in your email and we'll reach out to you to schedule an introduction call. And typically on those calls, we like to just get to know you better. And just for agency owners or someone working at an agency, love to understand the lay of the land, what challenges you're seeing, what pain points you're experiencing.
Right.
And from there, we'll customize a demo of OneForts to show you what we can do for you, specific use cases that you can take advantage of, and then we'll get into next steps from there. It's usually pretty easy to get up and running. We don't try to have these long, kind of sales cycles of different contracts and kind of different billing and subscriptions that people have to get used to. We make it super easy for folks, and I'm sure for anyone that is using us or is interested or will have that conversation with us, you'll see why that's the case. But yeah, we make it easy for folks to get set up. So there's some times where I'll talk to an agency for the first time, and they're up and running by the day after that. So yeah, we want to make it
Dude,
easy.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Very cool. Well, man, I appreciate you hanging out in Insurance Town with us, and
sure.
being a part of the show. And I'm hoping that you'll get some traffic, and people will reach out to you. And I'm hoping that there was some people listening. They were, yeah, kind of shaking their head as they're driving or running on the treadmill, or like, man, he's dead. Like I have these problems too. Or maybe they have a little PTSD moments there, like, oh yeah, you're right. But if you could solve for that, with this technology, you can help out with some of that. I think that'd be great. So again, thank you. I hope you have a great weekend. As we mentioned earlier, it's Friday morning. The listeners are listening to this, or if it's not your weekend, then enjoy the rest of your week. But Toby, for you, enjoy your weekend. Hope you have a good time, and I'll see you very soon at North Carolina.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Heath. I appreciate all that you do as well for the ecosystem, man. There's so many, there's a lot that folks are interested in, and they're not always not sure. They're not always sure where they should be going for that information. But with your podcast, with all the great work that you do, I think you're doing a lot. So I really appreciate what you're doing as well.
Oh man, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
brother, I appreciate you.
Same here. I'll talk to you soon, and I'll see you.